You're listening to Travel Tales with Fergal.
Like, what are people looking for now, tourists?
Basically, we don't need to reinvent life. We need to look back to our past and search the inspiration that lies on that past. Basically, we don't need to create nothing new. Exactly. It's just a question of researching, looking back, and trying to reproduce as much as originally what made us once very happy in life.
I think no matter who goes, you will be taken aback by how drastically different it is to other aspects of that country.
Minha terra é muito linda, tem tanta coisa para ver.
My village is very beautiful.
No cimo da nossa serra
In the
há 7
top of
fontes
the
a correrem.
hill, our hill,
Nossa aldeia é montanha.
our
Todos
village mountain.
Sai água fresquinha
We have clean water and fresh
que refresca o coração.
and refresh our heart.
No cimo da nossa serra,
In the top of
semeia-se
our
tanto
hill,
pão.
in our scenty bread.
Quando fiz este poema,
When I do this poem,
nas mãos tinha guardanapo.
in my hand I have the
Eu
clean.
vou dizer o meu nome,
I do my name,
Lucília de Almeida Matos.
Lucilia de Almeida
Quando eu
Matos.
comecei a pensar,
When I start
estava ao lado
to
da
think,
fonte.
I stay near of the water.
Minha cidade é a Guarda,
My city is Guarda.
a aldeia de Vidamat.
My small village is Vilmonte.
Tem 3 capelas tão lindas.
We have 3 chapels, beautiful chapels.
Amamos do coração.
We love from our heart.
É Nossa Senhora de Lourdes,
Our Lady of Lourdes,
Santo António
Santo Anthony,
e Santo Antão.
and Santo Antão.
Obrigado.
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 Thank you very much.
Nada.
Hello, my name is Fergal O'Keeffe and you're very welcome to my Centre of Portugal Destination Special podcast, where I hope to convey how stunning this mountainous region between Lisbon and Porto really is. I visited the Centre of Portugal in September, and what really shone through from that trip was how friendly the people were and their love for this magical place. I visited the Centre of Portugal in September, and what really shone through for me was how friendly the people were and how much they loved this magical place. You heard that pride in the voice of the local Renata Diaz there in the introduction, and the cheerful rhythms of the village poetess Lucilia from the village of Vidamat. And Vidamat is just one of the many dazzling mountain villages I visited on that trip. The landscapes in the centre of Portugal are continuously changing, from the endless Atlantic surf beaches on the coast all the way up to the Serra da Estrela mountain range with Portugal's highest peak. This area contains over 40 mountain villages, all with their own unique personalities, 4 natural parks and 5 World UNESCO Heritage Sites. For more information, check centreofportugal.com. You'll hear now from an interview I did on Clare FM, and that'll be followed by Paul McLaughlan from the Irish Examiner, who you heard also in the intro. So let's go straight into this episode.
Last time you joined us, Fergal, you were telling us how eagerly anticipated this trip to Portugal was. So make us all extremely envious and take us through the blow-by-blow account of where you went in Portugal and how great the weather was.
Well, I had my flight was with TAP Air Portugal, which I would never have even thought about before. You know, normally everyone kind of looks at Aer Lingus or Ryanair. So I went with them and that was seamless. And as I said, I flew into Lisbon and I've been there a few times and I absolutely loved that place. So I'm probably a little bit unusual in that I had a little taste of the centre of Portugal or the mountains villages before, and I'd say anyone who's gone to Lisbon might have gone to, say, Sintra, which is a little mountain village outside of Lisbon. So that was my first taste of it. And I went to a place called Óbidos, where there's a medieval festival there all year. It's a little walled medieval town. I went to a place called Quimbre, which is actually the capital of the region. So I've gone to all these places before. Quimbre is famous for one of the oldest universities in the world, and again a beautiful old historic town. And I mentioned the last time I went to place Tomer, which is this little old medieval town where the Templar Knights had their headquarters, which was one of the most historic or most atmospheric places I've ever been to. So I was mad eager to get back to this area. And I don't think it's that well known with Irish people. People will know Fatima. So Fatima is sort of at the edge of this area, and a lot of people go to pilgrimages there. But I think that it's going to be an area that's going to grow in popularity. You know, Irish people love going to the Algarve, but, you know, there was like questionnaires or research done during the year, during COVID, about what people would be looking for when they look for travel again. And the buzzwords that were coming out were like slow travel, ethical travel, sustainable, less crowded, safe, nature, outdoors, and all those things actually are this area in the centre of Portugal. And I was talking to people there, and even for Portuguese people, they're discovering this area themselves, a bit like we did during the pandemic. They couldn't go abroad, so they've started to go to this area. And then the tourism industry in that area realised this, and they are doing a huge investment between the government and the tourism industry to grow these areas. You know, they're doing things like they're now encouraging remote working, which is a very topical thing in Ireland. And I met people that, like we say, had been living in Lisbon that were now moving to these mountain villages in the centre. And what they're doing is these old schools are being converted that were being unused into remote working centres. And the government are building these amazing remote centres, and everything in it is built, you know, from the curtains to the tables to everything by the local communities as well. So it's creating, I think it's a really interesting thing that Ireland could look at as well, and say from a tourism point of view then, you know, it's the most stunning area. Like that area is sort of the very first, it was the first natural park in Portugal originally. It's called the Serra da Estrela Natural Park, this huge natural park. And then within it, there's all these little mountain villages, and each one kind of has its own personality and outdoes each other, you know, for the welcome. And that was the thing I really noticed when I was there. You know, at the start I was going, is this just because, you know, their tourists are coming back? But the more I talked to people, the more I kind of went, what makes this area in Portugal different from other mountain areas, say I've been to, is, you know, when you go to mountain areas, sometimes they can be a little bit unfriendly or suspicious at first. It takes a while to get to know people. But these people, the Portuguese, particularly in the mountains, maybe all over Portugal, unbelievably friendly. Anytime you stopped, kind of reminded me of the Aran Islands a little bit, but in the mountains, like the old stone walls and stone buildings, like say in the west of Ireland or the Aran Islands. And the people were, you know, traditional clothes, the older people, and they were unbelievably friendly. For example, like I went to a village called Vidamat, and all these villages have these old communal baking areas where they bake bread for the village, and you're walking through the village and you can smell the bread, and they come out and they invite you in, or if you're walking past someone, they talk to you because they're mad eager to get tourists. And this tourism is kind of new really for this area. So it was lovely being somewhere where they were so eager to welcome people. That's what I would say about people. If they love the outdoors, and if they love history, then this is the part of the country for them, because it's really strong. And everywhere I went, talking to people, like I had a great chat one time with a guy who had been working in Germany, and then he moved back to Lisbon, and now he was living in the mountains. And now he was going, you know, they don't have to reinvent anything. They have it, everything here that they used to have in the past, i.e. the traditional living and living in small towns and the outdoors. And they're rediscovering that now. And I think that's the silver lining after the pandemic, that a lot of countries are going to realize that these little towns, or, you know, the outdoors is where it's going to be from a tourism point of view.
What was the weather like for this time of year, Fergal? Was it bearable? Was it really hot, or how was it?
It was absolutely perfect. So, you know, I think it was sort of, you know, it might have gone up to 25 degrees, but, you know, around the 20 degrees mark. And, you know, it was funny, the Portuguese would be going, oh, it's a bit chilly. And I was going for swims. And I was joking with the owner. I was staying in this village, this gorgeous hotel called Casa Stalapa, in a village called Lepa, Dostoneros. And, you know, I was going for a swim. They got an outdoor pool, and the locals were looking at me like I was mad. And the sunsets were like sunsets I've never seen before. And maybe it was because it was autumn, but the glow in the mountains. And I was joking with the owner of the hotel saying, thanks for organizing great sunsets. But, they were going, oh, it's a little bit chilly, but it was perfect weather. I think that's why Irish people like Portugal, because it's not too hot, and particularly up the mountains as well. It would be cooler even during the summer. So for me, it was perfect for walking, because it wasn't too hot.
It sounds like the break or vacation you took, certainly in a country like Portugal is one, that you went to places where when people tend to go to Portugal, they perhaps don't visit these. Would you, for a first-time visitor, would you encourage them to take the same trip you took, or would this be more for people who've been to Portugal a number of times and have already exhausted the Lisbon or Faro type holidays?
Yeah, well, for both. So the people that have exhausted that, I would say to be a little bit more imaginative and to go up to Lisbon. I mean, I would go the perfect trip. If I was doing a trip, would be to fly into Lisbon, hire a car, go to Quimbre, which is say an hour outside, a beautiful medieval town, and then to go up to the mountains and spend a few days in the mountains, and then go up to the Douro Valley, where is the top wine region in Portugal, and go to Porto and then fly out of Porto. And that would be a perfect trip. And if you wanted to, when I was there, we actually went to Nazaré, which was the coast. So all along that coast are beautiful beaches. And that's famous for like having the highest surfable waves in Europe. You'd always see those famous photos. It's right on, there's a little lighthouse and there's big waves. But as a trip, I would go, Lisbon, go up the mountains and go to Porto. And that would be an amazing trip. And if you're into walking, I mean, it's unbelievable that you can go to these villages and then there's day walks, Like I went to one village called Lorigo, and they had this gorgeous walk, and they called it the route of the airplane, where you walk from the village up to the top of the mountain where an old RAF plane crashed during World War II, and that was called the walk of the airplane. And then you can walk back down. And the thing that I really loved about these villages, because, we love to get a swim in as well, is they've got these things called river beaches. Now that they've started every village sort of has them. And what they do is they put kind of wooden dam in the river during the summertime. And it has all the facilities of a beach area. So it has like beach huts and umbrellas and little bars and a swimming area and really clear waters. And you can swim there, surrounded 360 by the mountains. So that was amazing. And again, I went for a swim there, and I was the only person that did go for the swim. The Portuguese were looking at me, but the water was, as warm as Ireland, really, even at that stage. So that was really refreshing, surrounded by mountains. And the food is amazing there. And then the wine, I mean, the wine, like as I said, the Douro Valley, but this area is called the wine region around here. Like every village has got these tiny little vineyards, and that area is called Dao, D-A-O, that appellation for that area. And it was amazing wine. Like I had the owner of the hotel I was in, her father had a vineyard, and it was like a sparkling wine, like champagne, and it tasted like champagne. It was quite amazing. So the Dao, the red wines there, are unbelievable. So if you're into wine, and then the food as well. So there's lovely food, and a lot of these hotels, as I said, it's a real growing area, these new hotels. And like just say the chef in the hotel I was in was only 21. So it was kind of real traditional food with a modern twist. And I love that, like loads of courses, but lots of, they're small courses. So the food, I mean, it was quite amazing there. Really, really high standard, Just for people, if they're interested in that area about Portugal, like there's a website, centerportugal.com or visitportugal.com. And as I said, I would really recommend it, because it just, you feel like you're going to somewhere new, even though it's Portugal. It's very different from the Algarve and, like Lisbon and Porto as well. I mean, it's just such a stunning part of the country. It's stunning people. They really are.
Now you're going to hear from Paul McLaughlan, a journalist with the Irish Examiner, who was also on the trip with me. And then you're going to hear from Renata Diaz, who is on, we mentioned about the co-working projects they have in the mountains, where they're converting old buildings like old schools into co-working areas to bring people back from the cities. And Renata is one of those people.
Hi Paul, you wrote a great article in the Irish Examiner about the centre of Portugal. The headline was like, "Can eco-friendly holidays deliver?" I just want to read the first paragraph to you, because it sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
Forget what you know about Portugal.
Beyond the shimmering sands of the Algarve or the bustling capital of Lisbon, a series of villages sprawled across the Serra da Estrela mountain range is home to the country's heart and a new kind of tourism. And I think that sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the experience of being in the mountain villages really kind of showed you a different side to Portugal that you might not see. And I think especially for Irish people, it's one that we really don't see because like I obviously picked Lisbon and the Algarve as an example, but you know, Lisbon is quite popular for city breaks. The Algarve is extremely popular for holidaymakers in Ireland. But then seeing this side of Portugal, it was almost, even when I was asked to go on the trip, it was a side of Portugal that I didn't really know much about myself. I'd never heard of it. And being there and seeing the kind of people that are there, seeing the way of life, I think it really put into perspective that this is kind of the real Portugal in many ways.
Yeah,
it doesn't hide behind anything.
And that's the word, what I liked about that, like you said, the country's heart. And that's what it felt like there, the heart or the soul of the country. And as you said, like exactly, it sounds like a cliche, but you know, like the real Portugal, it really felt like you were getting to know the real country, didn't it? Yeah,
I think we were like truly immersed in the kind of day-to-day life of people. That was, for me, the most striking part of the trip, was that idea that these people who you might think at first, who they don't engage with tourists that much, you might think there might be that kind of apprehension. But I think the way that they welcomed us with such open arms was truly remarkable. It was so genuine and so welcoming. They really wanted us to experience their way of life, which I think for some places, they might not do that. They might be like, have that apprehension to kind of welcome people in. But these people were very much kind of eager to have us see what was going on there and how they live life.
What really shone through was the pride and passion that they have for their area. And I love that. I love when you go somewhere and people are really proud of where they're from, and that really shone through.
This area, this part, the mountain area or the centre, it's like the hidden heartland of Portugal.
It is absolutely true. In the prospects, in the tourist prospects that you see about Portugal, you see our seaside very, very frequently. You see our bigger towns very, very frequently. But places like these are hidden gems. Exactly. If we get quiet now for a moment, you can hear the birds.
And we're in the center of the village.
You can hear the wind. You can hear the wind, breeze. This is something that we don't have in bigger towns. This is something that is really the true value of inner areas in Portugal. You cannot have this in Lisbon, you cannot have this in Algarve, you cannot have this in Porto.
And the other thing that I've really noticed is sometimes in countries you go to the mountains, people can be maybe suspicious, but here is totally different. Everyone's so welcoming and open.
The Portuguese people have a unique characteristic. When someone new come to a place like this, they are very happy to share with you their most simple things, but for them their most valuable things. It goes from sharing a meal, sharing something that they have done with their own hands, arts and crafts, share their stories, share their collective memories. And in Lisbon or in Porto, people are too busy to do it. They don't have time to spend with you and tell you this hidden culture, this hidden lifestyle that still persists in time. Is there, is available. You can pick it, you can feel it.
Exactly.
And it's so easy as to come here and be ready to receive it.
Exactly. It's so open.
It's open.
Mm-hmm.
I would call it open source culture.
Yes.
It's available.
Exactly.
It's available. It's like a tree fully of fruits available to be picked up. And the people will be very glad to share that with you. You will make their day just by being able to listen them to talk. You'll say at the end of the day, wow, what I have been missing all these years.
Exactly. And surrounded by the mountains and beauty.
It's true. It's true. Absolutely true.
Thank you.
Now we're going to hear from Susana Cardoza, who's the director of Visit Portugal Ireland, and she gives a great overview of the whole area at the centre of Portugal and what it's got to offer. Susana, a lot of Irish people know the Algarve very well, but I don't think they're aware yet about how stunning the mountains are in the centre of Portugal. Like, how would you say this area is different from that traditional area where Irish have been going for years?
Oh, that's very, very different. Yeah, it's nice to have something different to showcase to the Irish market, which already knows Algarve very well and is getting to know Lisbon and Porto. But we still have some secrets to uncover, I should say. And the mountain villages in Serra da Estrela, which is the highest mountain in mainland Portugal, it is an example. So those are little villages that are in the natural park with a very authentic, I guess, way of being and preserving the heritage and the traditions. So it is a very special place. Even for the Portuguese. So the center of Portugal is a very diverse region in Portugal. So it is south the Douro River, which is the border of the Porto and the north region, and it is above the Tagus River. So it's in between two rivers, I should say. So it is very diverse. It has the coastline, with some fisher villages that are also nice. You probably saw some of them, like Nazaré and Peniche and all that. And then you have the mountains, and you have different projects. You have the mountain villages, but you also have the historical villages, which are close to the border of Spain. They are I'd say, very small dots on the map, but they played a very important role in defending the country from Spain, which was our main enemy at the time. So they all have a castle, they all have a church to celebrate the battle that we won, and they are very special places. And also you have near Quimbre, which is the main city of the center of Portugal, the most relevant one. A lot of tradition also in Coimbra. So you have the first university in Portugal and one of the first universities of Europe, actually, there, and it's also the capital of the Fado. So it's worth going there. And so close to Quimbre, you have the Chists villages, which are over 40 villages that have a very characteristic way of the houses are made out of schist. And also are very well preserved. So I think the center of Portugal is, especially if you go inland, you can have more of an authentic experience. You know, you go there, an experience with the locals. You probably felt that yourself when you went there. So it's good to do outdoor activities. It's good to be in the nature, and it has very good foods and wine as well. So it is a nice place to go and make something different. So it is kind of nice. So I would recommend that.
Now you're going to hear a chat I had with Paul McLaughlan from the Irish Examiner
about our favourite places, the favourite villages and sites that we saw on that trip to Portugal. I read in your articles you were saying like the villages, a lot of them have different personalities, don't they? So I mean, it would make a great trip. Sort of, you need a car and to go spend a night or two in a couple of different villages because they all have different personalities, don't they?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And even in terms of like the landscape, it changes between them. And even when you go from like, you know, a micro village to a medium-sized one to a town and so on and so forth, there is, in terms of size, I think that probably informs how the villages have different personalities, but also in terms of what they have to offer and the people there, there's a very strong sense that each village is individual and very proud of being individual.
That first place that we went to, the place where we stayed, I suppose, was Lepa Dostoneros. We stayed in a gorgeous hotel there, Casas de Lapas. And I think it kind of showed how people were starting to invest in the area, this gorgeous hotel with a couple of pools. That was a great base. I would recommend there, I have to say, for traveling around the area.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that was one of the most like beautiful hotels I've ever had an opportunity to stay in. Just you were immersed in the landscape and it was so quiet and it felt a bit removed from the rest of society. I mean, I think as you kind of wound up that big mountain, which, I mean, I don't drive, but I imagine if I was a nervous driver, I would be very terrified going up that on my own for the first time. And I think it's somewhere that I'd love to go back to. Yeah. And again, with the other hotel that we visited for a meal, I think it was San Lorenzo, I can't remember the exact name, but the idea that both of those places have this kind of trans-seasonal appeal, I feel like you could go there in the height of summer or the height of winter and you could still take away something really beautiful.
The most amazing sunsets there, didn't they? Like the hotel is kind of looking out over a valley with the mountains and the sun would go down over the mountains every night. And I thought I'd missed it the first night for taking photos, and every night, amazing sunset.
Yeah, it was spectacular. You were just transfixed by it going down, like the colors that it like set across the sky were just amazing.
What's really cool is the villages, they all have their own little festivals at different times, like in the autumn. I sounded great, like the Chestnut Festival, or they do one of the villages does a Christmas festival. The whole town is sort of lit up like a Christmas tree, and they have festivals throughout the year. So that I would say to people, if they were thinking about going, to have a look about what's on, because there's always some festival in one of those villages.
And that's something that really struck me. Even when I was sitting down to write my article, I was thinking, which ones do I pick? You know, there's so many to choose from because there is so many festivals scattered throughout the year, and that idea of, I suppose, celebration and festivity means more to us now than probably ever before, having, you know, been forced apart from each other for so long. Now that we can, I suppose, convene again, it's probably it just takes on new meaning to be able to have these moments of exchange and to be able to engage with each other and interact.
And a tricky question for you. So there, as you said, like there was loads of villages, there was over 40 and we went to loads of them. So which ones would you pick? Which ones come into your head then? That if someone said, which ones would you recommend to go and visit?
I mean, I was really attracted to Vidamat. I thought that was a really special place, just arriving and making bread and breaking bread with locals was just...
And it was a communal oven. So the locals just go into this communal oven to bake bread, a huge big oven.
And that's just amazing to me, that idea that, you know, we were immersed in their community, and even the way that we were immersed, it wasn't just kind of, you know, an instruction manual. We were really thrust into this kind of fast-paced bread making activity. And then after that, you know, walking around and meeting this 90-something-year-old woman who invites 15 people that are walking around the village into her house for lunch. I just think that is such a special way of life. And I think
her son was a Michelin-starred chef, wasn't
Yeah.
he? Very famous, this mountain village, and he's a very famous chef. He did Master Chef in Portugal, I think it was, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think he was working in like a Michelin-starred restaurant in Budapest.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah.
But I definitely think Vidamat for me takes the cake. I think that was my favorite.
You write loads for fashion, so we went to that area. Traditionally, wool manufacture was a big thing, and we went to the burrell factory. So that must have been great to get to see that for you.
Yeah, for sure. And even seeing the project that Sandra Pinho was working on with the cheesemakers, and how they had made these capes, or rather they'd made a modernized version of the capes that the cheesemakers wear. And I think there was only like 42 cheesemakers left in the region. And for them to, I suppose, take this kind of unique approach to, I suppose, documenting these people's existence in many ways by making this kind of beautiful cape from burrell wool. I think that was such a cool thing to see. And as a fashion writer, I'm always intrigued by stories. I mean, as a storyteller myself, that's what I think draws me most to what I do. So getting to see that aspect of things was really interesting, and to see how proud they were of the output was remarkable.
You know, the center of Portugal, they call it. We still haven't even talked about the landscape. I mean, wasn't it stunning? Absolutely. You're in the middle of the mountains.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And even I think on that drive from Lisbon to the mountains, watching the landscape change as you got closer and closer to the villages was so interesting. And I feel like that kind of the passage of time actually felt real, because you were watching the landscape around you change, and not so much drastically, but it was different from, you know, as you stretch along the motorway, you were really starting to see these kind of changes around you. And then when you get to the mountain villages, it's just a world of its own, these deep cavernous valleys and tall forests and this massive mountain range, but also the beautiful kind of fluvial beaches that we got to see with those like crystal clear waters. And it was just so amazing to see that it had all of this in one place, and how diverse it was in one place. There really was a bit of everything within these landscapes. And obviously, like we said, the sunset was just probably one of the best things.
I particularly liked the beaches, because they're like, you know, they're in these, every village sort of had one outside of them where they would have sand brought in, and they'd even have like maybe a little cabin with food and a lifeguard area. You know, they might have dammed the river to make water for like a natural pool area. But they were really, every village pretty much had them. My favorite one was the one in Loriga. Is that what it is? Yeah, I mean, that was amazing, because you're looking right up at the mountain.
And when I say crystal clear waters, that's what comes to my mind. I mean, I think that one was so beautiful, that kind of like extensive view over the valley, but also the view up a mountain range. It was just so unique. And I think for me, it was unlike anything I've ever seen before. I think no matter who goes, unless you have extensive knowledge of the region and the country, you will be taken aback by how drastically different it is to other aspects of that country.
We stayed at the wonderful Castle Stalapa Hotel in the village of Lepa, Dostoneros, when I was on that trip. And right beside the hotel, there was a great walk called the Ruta de Carnica mountain trail. And we walked on that trail to a nearby river beach, which we talked about, and I had a great swim that day. And now you're going to hear from a chat I had with our guide about the history of the area on the way back from that swim to the hotel.
It recalls to a time where, as you know, shepherds are very religious. And so in order to collect good fortune, they would do a big fest where they would decorate the sheep and go around the church or the chapel, and afterwards they go to the mountain. And in those days there would be a great party, and the wives said goodbye to their husband that were going up, because at that time there were wolves, and there still are.
You were saying about like the history of the place, and like pre-pagan, even Celtic tradition, and you were saying about the dolmens.
Yeah.
So you were saying they're all, what did you say, they're all aligned?
They are all aligned. The entrance of the dolmen, they all point to the rise of one star that's called Aldebaran. It's a star from the constellation Taurus, and it was like a signal for the movement of the shepherds to the mountain. It was the time where they would left the lowlands and take the sheep to the mountain, sheep and goat to the mountain, where the pastures with the thawing were greener and for longer.
And you're saying that all the entrances to the dolmens all pointed
to that same star at the same time of the year.
Wow, isn't that amazing? And that was thousands of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 5 to 10,000 years ago. Some dolmens are more recent, or others are older, and they all point in the same direction, the entrance of the dolmen.
So there's actually like the Celtic tradition, history, pre-Romans then that was in this area.
Yes, so this was the Iberic Peninsula was inhabited long before the Romans got here. Not only by local peoples like the Galicians, the Lusitans, but also prehistoric people like the Celtics, the Visigoths, some from the North Africa region, and the Portuguese Reconquista.
So did the Moors come to here as well?
Yes, we expelled the Moors in around when Portugal was created.
Yeah.
The Portuguese was a small county, and Dom Afonso Henriques went all the way to Lisbon, expelling the Moors.
Yeah.
And the Dom Sancho and Dom Afonso II continued to reach Algarve, and around in 1200 it was when we conquered all the Portugal territory, and our border has been more or less the same since then. But if you go before that, the Romans were here roughly 2,000 years ago, and Ceia, the city where is this municipality, was a Roman settlement. It was called Civita Scena, and on that mount over there, here, on the other side of the mount, there's a fort, an old Roman fort, that is the oldest Roman structure here in this region.
Wow.
There's also a very big influence by the Moors, especially in the southern part of Portugal, even in terms of architecture, where you have the above the entranceways have this shape, and it was part of the Portuguese Reconquista that was supported by the church, the Catholic Church, and because of our success, the Pope, I can't remember his name, gave us confirmed our independence as a country from Spain. Not Spain at that time, Castile But yeah,
a place that I've been to before when I was in Lisbon was Tomer.
Yeah.
And I loved it. The history.
They had a Templar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so magical there, isn't it?
Yeah. Óbidos is also a very
and
beautiful place.
Óbidos, exactly.
So if you go all across Portugal, you find lots of those type of cities. Braga is also like that. Viana do Castelo is also like that. In the interior, most of these we have lots of castles. So possibilities.
Like my impression is that now, after COVID, people are going to start appreciating the outdoors and quieter areas and away from the crowds. So we'll start to appreciate areas like this.
There was a trend already starting before COVID, especially for inner tourism for Portuguese people, because people that came here from other countries, mainly Germany, Dutchland, and Belgium, a little bit from the UK, already knew what was the potential of this region. They came here to do nature walks. The Portuguese didn't do that very much. It was a niche market, but nowadays, with Google Maps and Wikilocs and tracks available everywhere, it's fashionable to do nature walks.
I'm just looking here at the sun's going down, and it's just green trees everywhere for miles and miles. It's spectacular, isn't it?
It is, and it is we are in Europe. It is the old continent. Exactly. We have been in for forever.
As I said at the start of the podcast, I really love the amazing scenery in the mountains in the centre of Portugal and the gorgeous mountain villages. But what really stood out for me was the pride, passion and friendliness of the people that I met there. I'd like to give special thanks to Madmotus Tours, who brought us all around the trip, and also very special mention to Celia Concalves from the Aldeias de Montaña group. They're the mountain village group that are helping all these villages. Again, for more information on this area, check out centerofportugal.com, and that's CENTER of Portugal.com for loads of information on this beautiful area. Also, I want to say that today is my last episode of season 3, so I'll have a little break now, but I've already got some great interviews lined up for season 4, so I look forward to sharing those with you. So please follow me on Instagram for updates for when season 4 comes out. Thank you for listening. I would ask if you could please subscribe to Apple Podcast so a new episode will appear in your library every week. I would also really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review, as it helps others to discover this podcast. To find out who's on every Tuesday, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Travel Tales with Fergal. Stay safe and keep dreaming of future travels.
Travel Tales with Fergal.